So the Kraken lose 4-3 because of a puck that was kicked into the net. Huh, where have I heard that before? What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where, you know what, all things considered, it's just good to have hockey back, even though the Kraken are now on a 6-game losing streak, falling 4-3 to the Colorado Avalanche. After 9 days without hockey and 3 more postponed games, it is nice to be able to watch the Kraken play again, even if they do keep losing. And I think this now makes 7 games total that they have to make up later on, which hopefully means that the season doesn't get pushed back and those can all get made up in February, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Before we get too deep into this one, though, I do have to apologize because I pretty much just blatantly missed something pretty big that happened in the Kraken's last game, which was, again, a week and a half ago against Vancouver. That, of course, being the Nadia Popovici story, which by now I'm sure all of you have probably heard about and know what happened there, but just in case some of you are out of the loop, she is the fan who happened to be sitting behind the Canucks bench during the home opener way back in October, saw a not too great looking mole on the back of one of their equipment managers, and decided to get up the courage to put something on her phone, actually go out of her way to make it a large readable message in the flow of everything happening, got his attention, and while at the time he only kind of slightly acknowledged it, he did end up calling a doctor. They found out it was a cancerous mole and had it removed. Doctor told him that had it gone 4 or 5 more years, he might have been in some pretty deep water. So anyway, fast forward a few months until the next time the Canucks are in Seattle, again the game a week and a half ago, and they put out a message through him asking if anybody can find this person who helped save his life. And after just a couple of hours of the Canucks putting out the message, the Kraken then retweeting it and getting it out to all of their fans, her mom did see it through a Facebook group, and they finally found her and managed to have those two unite before the game. She was back in attendance and back behind the bench, and partway through the game, they acknowledged the whole situation and also announced that the two teams, the Kraken and the Canucks, were going to come together to give her $10,000 for her med school student loans, which I guess is also an important part of the story, that she actually is a med student, so kind of knew what she was talking about, even though he didn't necessarily know that at the time. So obviously it's a very nice, wholesome, heartwarming story that could have turned out pretty dark a few years down the road had she decided to do what I think most of us probably would have done and decided not to say anything. But she does say something, and it ends up capturing the interest of pretty much the entire hockey world and even some of the world outside of hockey, which I think caught a lot of people by surprise, but especially considering all of the, let's just say, not so bright stories that have surrounded the game of hockey and the sports world in general over the last few years. I think a lot of people were really happy to see an uplifting, happy story come across in a national news kind of way. And you know what? The Kraken might not go to a Stanley Cup in their first season, certainly not the way things are going right now, but at least one of their fans did save a life in that first season, which is something the Golden Knights can't say. The other thing that we found out more about over these last 9 days, though, as far as the Kraken are concerned, is certainly not as good of news. In fact, it's just downright bad news, as we found out that the Kraken are going to be without their current leading scorer in Jaden Schwartz for 4 to 6 weeks, as he had to have surgery on his hand after having gotten injured in that game at the end of that homestand before all the postponements. And especially with the Kraken going off on this 3-game road trip to face 3 of the 4 best home teams in the NHL by record, yeah, Schwartz is definitely a guy that they could have used the help of to at least try to get a win in maybe one of these 3 games. Even if this first one against the Colorado Avalanche was probably going to be a big ask, with them being the best offensive team in the league, the second best home team in the league, and also on an 11-game winning streak at home. Although, to be fair, the best home team in the league is the Florida Panthers, and the Kraken were the first ones to hand them a loss after they had gone on a huge home winning streak, so, I mean, maybe it could still happen. And it almost did. But it didn't. Anyways, we do get into the game. It's actually some pretty good early pressure and chances on the Colorado goal for the Kraken, which is definitely a good sign to see, especially against one of the best teams in the league, for a team that, again, hasn't played in 9 days. And sure, rest is a good thing, and the Kraken certainly needed some rest with the COVID and injury issues that they were having, even with just the 3 games after the big Christmas pause. But still, 9 days is quite a bit of time to be resting for an NHL team, so there's some concern that they could have come out rusty, but that doesn't seem to be the case. At least not up until a rebound off of a blocked shot in the Colorado end does quickly lead to a 3-on-2 going the other way, and a couple of passes later, the puck is into the back of the Kraken net just under 6 minutes into the game, and it's Nicolas Aube-Kubel, who does not score often, but when he does, it seems to be against the Kraken, regardless of what team he's playing for. I mean, I guess he's only scored for the Avalanche this season after coming over to Colorado from Philadelphia earlier in the year, but still, he only has 4 goals on the season after this game, and 3 of them are against Seattle, so yeah. Just a couple minutes after the Colorado goal, though, Seattle is going to get a chance on the power play to tie things back up at 1. And while Colorado's power play is pretty intimidating and one of the best in the NHL, their penalty kill, yeah, not so much. So this is a good opportunity for Seattle, and the power play right out of the gates is looking pretty composed, and while they're not taking every shot opportunity, they are taking a few, which is certainly more than we've seen at other points in this season. And finally, with about 30 seconds left in the power play and the second power play unit in, which is the old first power play unit with Gio as the quarterback, as it seems like they've switched those 2 power play units, at least for this game anyway. Either way, they find that crossing pass wing to wing that they seem to constantly be looking for. It's McCann to Eberle, who shoots and scores to tie up the game at 1, as his shot ends up actually going off of Johansson's stick in front of the net and bouncing over the pad of Francouz to tie up the game. And again, this goal does come off of what it seems to me is really what the Kraken are looking for in all of their power plays, to get that pass from one wing over to the other as their primary method of scoring. Just, it's not really all that frequently there, so we end up seeing that passing around the outside constantly and not taking shots, as they're trying to get it to the wing, back over to the other wing, and then take the shot, with the goalie having to go from one side to the other, which is obviously going to create a pretty good chance. Most teams, though, are good at locking down that middle and preventing that crossing pass, at which point we've seen the Kraken kind of pass a little bit too much rather than just put it on the net or get it to one of those guys that's in front of the net. Either way, they are able to make it work this time, and we are tied at 1. A few minutes later, Colorado does get a chance of their own on the power play to try to regain the lead. And again, this is one of the better power play units that the NHL has to offer, so you really don't want to be giving them too many chances at it. Though, to Seattle's credit, at least this time around, they make it look like a pretty easy penalty kill to make happen, as they keep Colorado out of the offensive zone for a good chunk of it and kill off this penalty without even giving up a shot. And even coming out of this penalty kill, the Kraken are able to continue to play very strong defensively to close out the period, really playing right up in the faces of the Colorado Avalanche, not allowing this high-flying, high-scoring offense too much time and space with the puck to create the opportunities that we've seen them take advantage of throughout the course of this season so far. And so as we start the second, the score is still tied up at 1, though now the Avalanche are going to get another chance on the power play early on in the second period. And this time, their power play is able to get a couple more chances off on the Kraken net. Though again, more than the 0 from the previous power play isn't saying much. And this power play also gets a chance for the Kraken going the other way shorthanded, as it's Donskoy and Gord. Gord tries to get a pass across to Donskoy so he can get his first goal of the season against his old team, but it's broken up by a back check, and this power play, by the time Alexiak is freed from the box, doesn't end up with either team getting on the board. Though that would not last for very much longer, as now coming out of a second successful penalty kill for the Kraken, they start to push back towards the other end of the ice and get some sustained pressure off in the offensive end on Colorado's net. And eventually, McCann picks a puck literally off the boards and fires it off at the net. It's a pretty low percentage shot. He's probably just looking for a rebound, but what he ends up finding is the back of the net to give the Kraken the 2-1 lead. It's one that Francouz would definitely like to have back, but he's not going to get it back, And this is why taking a shot from time to time is not necessarily a bad idea, because you never know, one just might go in that you weren't expecting to. The one potential downside of this goal is that the Kraken, taking their first lead in the game, seems to have activated the Avalanche trap card, as they, right off the ensuing faceoff, really start to push back on the Kraken, trying to get that evening goal right away. And they really don't let up, even though the Kraken and Grubauer are standing tall defensively. That having been said, even after about 10 minutes of this, where the Avalanche are definitely getting the better and majority of the chances and offensive opportunities, one chance that the Kraken get going the other way sees Alexiak take a shot from the middle of the blue line, and it's gonna sail wide of the net right up until Blackwell puts his stick right out in front of it to try and get a deflection as he's standing in front of the net. He's able to get his stick on it. It goes off his stick through the 5-hole and into the back of the net to make it 3-1 Kraken. And as was the case with Blackwell in this goal, throughout the course of this game, it definitely was good to see the Kraken able to get some guys out in front of the net, which is something we weren't necessarily seeing consistently in the 3 games between these 2 long breaks that we've had. And again, after another Seattle goal, the Avs try to respond quickly, which is something we've seen Seattle allow teams to do in the last 3 games before this one, but they weren't going to let it happen in this one, at least not so quickly as they did before, as they are able to hold off the first few attempts from the Avs, but eventually, after a few minutes of trying, they do manage to pull to within 1, as a shot rushing into the offensive zone is saved by Grubauer, but the rebound goes right out in front of the net, where it bounces off a few players, including Nicolas Aube-Kubel, who gets a bit of another shot off. That shot also bounces off of Grubauer's pad, but then goes off of Soucy in front of the net and slides into the corner to make it 3-2. Just seconds later, Seattle does get a late power play opportunity and a chance to respond quickly themselves, though this power play doesn't look quite as good as the first one, which I think is partly to do with Colorado's penalty kill definitely looking better than their first one. And eventually, with 30 seconds left in this one, it's not a goal, but Appleton losing his edge and sliding into the goaltender, which ends up creating a whole fracas in front of the net that ends up leading to Appleton to the box for goaltender interference and a pair of traded roughing calls, as we go to 4-on-4 for the remainder of the Kraken power play, and then a minute and a half of Kraken penalty kill. Fortunately, and definitely thanks in large part to a big Grubauer save during the penalty kill portion of that, none of which ends up leading to another Avs goal, even the portion of their power play that bleeds over into the start of the third period. And then, shortly after the penalty kill is over, Grubauer has to make another big save, this time going full splits out in front of the net to get his toe to the far corner to block another shot, and the Kraken once again dodge a little bit of a bullet here thanks to their goaltender. And after that, play does finally even out, at least for a few minutes, and until we get to the other side of the halfway point of the third period. Although, as time goes on, you can definitely see the urgency from the Avalanche ramping up more and more, as the play is definitely getting faster and faster going both ways. Eventually, as we know from the final score, the Avs pressure ends up being too much for the Kraken, as a shot from Makar with about 8 minutes left in the game goes off a post next to Grubauer, but goes right out to Taves, and he kicks it into the back of the net past Grubauer to tie up the game. And believe me, I know what you're probably thinking. Wait, I thought you couldn't kick the puck into the net in hockey. That shouldn't be a goal, right? Well, you would be right, except for you have to remember that kicking isn't really kicking in the NHL, and if that seems confusing, well, that's because it is. And again, you have to remember that this is a lesson that Kraken fans learned in literally the very first game that the Kraken ever played as a franchise, that first one all the way back at the beginning of the season in October in Vegas, when the Golden Knights kicked a puck into the net to take a 4-3 lead that they would hang on to win. And of course, as you may or may not remember, the BS explanation we got for that goal at the time was that that wasn't really kicking because the player deflected it off the outside of their skate and into the net. Now, it might have been different if he had, let's say, kicked out the inside of his skate and then it went into the net. Maybe that would be kicking. Well, apparently not, because here, Taves kicks out the inside of his skate, lifting it off the ice while it's moving towards the net, but apparently that's still not kicking, as this goal goes to review, but still is upheld as a good goal, and we have a tie game. So what's kicking in the NHL? I don't really know. I've got no answer for you. I mean, at this point, it seems like you have to drop kick the freaking thing. I'm glad that missed my foot. That would have hurt. So anyway, where were we? Ah, yes. The game is tied because kicking isn't kicking. At this point, Seattle is able to get some momentum, really for the first time in a sustained manner anyway, in the third period. Unfortunately, much as was the case for the Avalanche in the second when they had the momentum, the next goal comes against the flow of play, as Seattle gets caught being, I think, a little over-eager to try to retake the lead, as Lauzon pinches from the blue line down into the offensive zone. Gord is there back to cover for him, but the puck still ends up getting past most of the Seattle defense and turns into a 3-on-1 for the Avalanche going the other direction, and it's Kadri with the puck who ends up opting to take the shot. He beats Grubauer blocker's side, and the Avalanche take the 4-3 lead. Again, it's just a defensively irresponsible play for the Kraken, which is not all on Lauzon by any means, although I do have to say that as this was happening live and I saw him dive down into the offensive zone, I did think, uh-oh, this could be bad going the other way, especially against a potent offense like the Avs. And that's exactly what happened. For the second time in this game, the Kraken have a lapse in defense that leads to an odd man break going the other direction. And again, with an offense like the Avs and a team that scores as much as they do, they're going to make a lot of those count, even outside of the fact that that has been a problem for the Kraken pretty much all year long. To their credit, the Kraken do create a few more very good scoring chances in the last few minutes of this game, a couple of which had a very good chance of going in. Unfortunately, Francouz, ever since letting up that soft goal against McCann, has been absolutely standing on his head, with the only other goal that went in being the tip in by Blackwell, which, when a puck deflects as much as that one did, there's only really so much a goaltender can do. Francouz, though, absolutely saves this one from going to overtime, both before and after Grubauer eventually does get pulled with 2 minutes left. There's no empty net goal. The Kraken do get one more chance in the waning seconds, but again, the Avs hold on to win this one 4-3 in regulation. Honestly, all things considered, by the end of this game, generally speaking, I was pretty happy with how the Kraken played it. Obviously, there's a couple of those odd man breaks at the beginning and end of the game that you would like to see them have back, but after 9 days off, it's not terribly surprising that there's one or two rusty mistakes that they make. Grubauer, I also thought played pretty well, even if the stats don't necessarily show it. The Kadri goal, yeah, maybe you would like to see him save that one as it doesn't come off of a dangerous pass, but it still is on a breakaway, so it's not a situation you want to be putting him in as much as the Kraken continue to do. Yes, it is frustrating that now for the second time this season, the Kraken have lost 6 consecutive games, but it's also frustrating how this one happened, with them having for, again, the second time this season, lost thanks to a kicked-in goal that shouldn't have counted, but did because of the NHL's inability to decide what kicking really is. But also, as I've said before, and at this point, or at least for today anyway, really, I'm just happy to be watching hockey again, and specifically Seattle NHL hockey for the first time this season. And really, that's what this season is all about by the end of it, even if it doesn't go the way that we were hoping or in some ways expecting that it might. And as far as the short term is concerned, I mean, you could look at it this way. Sure, for again, the second time the Kraken have lost 6 consecutive games, but the last time the Kraken lost 6 consecutive games, the last one that they lost was to the Colorado Avalanche, and right after that, they went on that 7-game run that is still the shining jewel of this season. So now, as they go to Dallas and then St. Louis, again, the third and fourth best home teams in the NHL, who knows, maybe they can start to pull off some of those upsets that we saw during that run. Either way, this one has started to get a little bit long, so if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or anything else you have to add down in the comments section. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.